Hi there, folks. So I want to tell you about my cat. He is a super incredible animal. He's completely white and super fluffy, and he brightens my day and especially my nights, every night and every day. As soon as I hop into bed every night, he jumps into bed and he insists on getting pet, no matter what stands in his way. And he's just a major rock star in the house. Everybody wants to be with him because he's always so calming and fun to be around. He's goofy too. And I can't tell you how many times I've said out loud, man, in my next life, I want to be Sebastian. That's my cat's name. I mean, I've said it so many times, and I've thought it way more times than that. I actually get jealous of him. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a room on a day where I'm worried about 1,000 things and going over people and events in my head, and there he is, just sprawled out, total comfort, on our comfy bed, napping, waking up, eating, going back to just being completely sprawled out, totally comfortable. And I always think to myself, what a life. He doesn't have a care or worry in the world, and he's just always provided for, too. Now, Sebastian doesn't have much to worry about, like us humans do. But that's the thing. Sebastian can't worry. And why can't he worry? Well, because his brain doesn't possess the extremely powerful tool that our brains possess. He doesn't have the power of language. You see, he can't hold words in his head like us humans can. Of all the amazing abilities that different animals have on our planet, our ability of language is far and away the most powerful ability. It's the superpower of all species, but definitely our superpower. Because it is language that allows us to contemplate and solve the mysteries of the universe. I mean, everything from the pet rock to the theory of relativity is completely the result of our ability to use language. And, language is why we are currently the most dominant species on Earth. Because, yes, a lion could maul us, but we can ultimately use language in our head to outsmart them, at least most of the time. So it's a very powerful tool. But as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. See, language is most definitely our best and most useful tool, but it can also be our worst enemy. You see, my cat Sebastian, he can't worry about what happened to him yesterday, or he doesn't care that my other cat slapped him silly about 5 minutes ago, or that he's not worried that maybe he's chronically sick because he barfed on my counter last night. And he can't because he doesn't have language to hold these events and people and other animals in his head. He can't ruminate over them like us humans do way, way, way too often. He is completely and totally living in the moment. And, it's so interesting because if you step back and look at our time as humans here on Earth, the vast majority of our time here, if you remove the things that you're thinking about in your head, and you don't think about what happened earlier today, or what might happen tomorrow, those pesky bills, and you just soak in this moment. And you think about, the soft air on your skin, cushy seat that you're sitting on. Just think about it. When you're just in the moment, 99% of our time here is actually quite pleasant. And in this moment in particular in history, this is increasingly true with the comforts of modern society. All too often our frustrations boil down to what is going on between our left ear and our right ear. But we're not just this little space, right? We're not just our brains. We have entire bodies. And every inch of our body is alive and able to sense things. So if we can be in touch with the rest of our person, we are far, far more likely to realize the good in a moment rather than the bad in moments that already happened or that might happen. So, in cases like this, When we worry about things in our head, this is where language can be our enemy. But in the same way that language in our head can be a bumpy path to misery, it can also help to be the solid foundation upon which a bridge to contentedness is built. And so, seeing as how this podcast is about parenting, today I'm here to tell you about how you can help build this bridge in your children from an early age, and how you can use language to help your child be more mindful. Now, I can hear some of you saying right now, well, isn't being mindful and meditating and all that stuff about quieting language? About calming the monkey and the chatter in your head? Yes, definitely it is. But it is also about being in touch with your surroundings and being in the moment as much as possible. And I'm telling you, the groundwork for this is done with ample and flowery language. In order to help your child be mindful, you must first make their mind full of language that allows them to identify and be fully acquainted with this incredible experience that we call life. So, can your kid be fully in the moment, as my cat Sebastian? No, probably not. Humans will never be quite in the moment like them. But the truth is, it's far, far better to be human. Because if we use our superpower in the right way, if we use language to get in touch with and fully realize our senses, then it becomes much easier to be in the moment instead of in our heads. By doing this, we can turn average moments into sumptuous moments. So, how can you ensure that your children are using their superpowers of language properly? That's what we're going to talk about today. Using language to be fully in touch with external and internal worlds. So keep tuning in because it's time to chat.
Hi, I'm Tanya Friend, and I've been a speech and language pathologist for 13 years. I am also the owner and director of Chatterbox Speech Therapy, a speech therapy practice that serves the children and community in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
And I'm Corey Walker. I've been working with children for nearly 20 years, and I was a pioneering app developer in the area of speech and language pathology. We all have gifts in this life, and mine is knowing what makes children tick. Parenting in the modern age comes with uncharted challenges. We'll be bringing you discussions with experts in childhood development and introducing some tough questions and topics.
Together, with our experience and knowledge, we have created this podcast to help you with your child's development and wellness. So, listen up.
Because it's time to chat.
Nobody really knows how to be a parent, do they? I mean, some of us are better at it than others, and we definitely have instincts that kick in, hopefully. But at the end of the day, there is just no manual, right? I remember when I had my first kid, I think I was 28, and the nurses and the doctors, they did what they do so well. We spent the night in the hospital, everything checked out, and then it was time to leave. And I remember thinking so vividly, wait a minute, you're just going to let me walk out of here with this human, this fragile baby? I mean, I had to go through rigorous testing and classes so I could drive a car. Or I had to go to school for 6-7 years to become a language pathologist. But here I've made a person and nothing. Just, here you go. Good luck. You know, being a parent is it's the definition. It is the prime example of the word bittersweet. It's incredibly and mind-blowingly profound and just beautiful, while also being utterly exhausting and perhaps for me, the biggest negative of being a parent is guilt. Could I be doing more? Should I be doing less? Are the things that I am doing the right things? I mean, I know that we all want the best for our kids. In a perfect world, we would have that manual, right? And we would have all the time in the world to implement these things that would help our children prosper. But it is not a perfect world, I think it's safe to say. For sure, the one thing that none of us have enough of here on earth is time. Now, there are a lot of things that by now we do know that are good for children. Veggies and reading to them, plenty of affection, bathing them at least sort of regularly. But even when we do know what is good for them, how in the world do we squeeze it all in? And this is why so many companies have used some form of the slogan, "It's nutritious and delicious." Because we want to be able to squeeze as much goodness into a moment as possible. Kill as many birds with one stone as we can. Because the more good that you can cram into something for your children, the better off everybody will be, right? So that's why today I want to talk about why it is so important to get your children familiar with their five senses and the language that surrounds getting familiar with your senses. Because of all my years as an educator and as a parent, this is the thing that I have seen that to be most effective and that does so many things at one time, from an educational perspective and from a mindfulness perspective. So look, it improves vocabulary, greatly improves vocabulary. It improves their ability to recall and retain words. It greatly broadens their perspectives. And when perspectives are broadened, this greatly promotes critical thinking and creative thinking. And then, as I said, it greatly promotes mindfulness. And this is what I want to talk about especially today. Because, look, one of the most difficult things that we face as clinicians is giving children awareness of their speech and or language errors. Because most children are actually unaware of their errors because they're just kind of on autopilot. And, we can and we do point these errors out while we are in sessions with them. But this is generally for just 30 minutes a week, maybe an hour if they're lucky. But either way, this is not near enough time to adequately promote awareness. And we are also asking them to have awareness about one specific thing without the foundation for awareness, the foundation for awareness in general being in place. It would be like me asking you to do and hold an advanced yoga position without you first doing things that would strengthen your core, make it easier to hold that position. So, if we want a child to have awareness about their speech and their language, we need to first make sure that they have a good base in awareness altogether. And a fantastic way of strengthening their core in this regard is by ensuring that they are indeed familiar with their senses. Except for, in this case, strengthening your core doesn't suck big time like it does with having to do crunches and everything else. But it can actually be quite fun. So let's do a little activity. So I'm going to read a list of words, and I want you to pay attention to the thoughts and the feelings, the images, actions that pop into your head as I read the following words. Okay, you ready? Black widow. Cotton candy. Grandma. Tropical storm. Here's a fun one. Audit. Comforter. So each one of those words brings up vivid thoughts and images and feelings and actions, right? It's incredible what just one word can do. So words, or the combination of words, they are the constant reference points or anchors that all of us use all day to navigate through our days. Now, just like as when I was reading those words, we can hear words and that elicits meaning. They are reference points for telling us what to do. But in life, things actually, they have to go the other way too. So when we have an experience or feelings or see something that's out of the ordinary, we need to be able to assign words to those in order to properly process them. Humans need language to process through our emotions and events and things that happens to us. So look, we've all heard the phrase, I'm speechless, or I have no words. And we use this phrase, why do we use this phrase? Because whatever it is, whatever just happened, it's baffling. It's outside our realm of understanding, right? to us, it's undecipherable. We're shocked because we don't have words for it. Now, if we did have words for it, it might still mean that you would be angry or shocked or super duper happy, but you would at least know what it was that you were feeling. But when we don't have words for something, it's hard to process through it. The unnameable is the unknown, or, baffling at the very least. So this is how intertwined words are with our relationships with reality. We truly rely on words to process through life. Language is primarily just viewed as something that we use to communicate with others. And, obviously it's that. But really it is so much more than that. I want you to ask yourself, who do you communicate with more than anybody in your life? Is it your spouse, your mother, your best friend, your children? Well, if you think about it, the person that you communicate with the most is yourself. We use language in our heads all day long to propel ourselves through the day. And if you don't think that you're using language in your head all that much, try meditating for a minute or 30 seconds and completely clear your head of thoughts. It's very hard to do. We are always living in a world of language. That is why it's so important to give your children the gift of words, and why it's especially effective to do this using the framework of our senses. So I want to give you an example of something that I came across once with a client. We were working with a young little boy who he was slightly delayed in language. He was roughly 3, maybe 4 years old. And we would work with him in a relatively big room with a few other kids every time that he came. And normally he was a very good kid. But one day things started to get difficult with him. And inevitably he would start acting very grumpy and yelling and throwing things. And none of us knew quite how to reach him. But one day he started covering his ears while he was acting up. So we decided to dig into whether or not he was having issues with hearing. And after a visit to the doctor, we found out that he didn't have an ear infection, but he did have extra fluid in his ears, more than normal. And if you have ever experienced this, or you've even just had water stuck in your ear, you know how very frustrating this can be, right? It makes all of us more irritable. So after knowing this, I decided to, when he wasn't there one day, I decided to go sit in the room when nobody was in there and just listen. So, so often, even when we think a room is quiet, there actually is still some sort of noise. And in this particular setting, there was a slight and persistent hum in the room, and because there was a fan in another room that was running. So we decided to get rid of that noise, and we talked to the other kids about not making loud, unexpected noises. And the next time he came, we were careful with our volume, and we turned off the fan, and he made it through the session just fine. So really what it was the combination of this persistent hum and the fluid in his ears that was causing him to be irritated and frustrated. And, eventually the fluid in his ears was dealt with, and we kept being aware of these background noises, and we never had problems with him again. So this is a prime example of where helping children to be aware of their senses and giving them the language to communicate about it could have been immensely helpful. If he had been taught about the feeling of a muffled sound, or a dizzying feeling, or about the sounds of slight hums, the sound of a fan, how do you describe it? All of this this all could have accomplished two things. Number one, of course, he could have used words to communicate about it. But number two, it would have helped him be more mindful that these sensations were there in the first place. Because it's really difficult to identify something if you don't even know that it's a thing, that it's necessarily there. Because you have to be able to separate it out from the cacophony of senses. Sometimes it's all just jumbled together, and language helps us parse this out and identify things specifically. So if he had all these words that could pop up in his head when he sensed them, then he could have had a much easier time processing the world around him. Just like when you hear sirens, you know what it means now when you do. But if you've never been taught that these loud, piercing sounds come from a police car or an ambulance, it could just be a loud additional sound in your environment that would cause confusion and discomfort. But since you do know, you're able to identify it and calmly assess what you're supposed to do. Remember, words are your child's reference points that help them process through the day. You know the feeling of having a word stuck on the tip of your tongue? And you want to say something so bad, you know the word, but it just isn't coming out. And think about how frustrating this is. Now I want you to take this feeling and imagine it in your children if something happens to them, but they can't find the words to talk about it, to tell you how they feel. We see this all the time, actually. When children are not able to answer questions or talk about how they feel, they end up acting out with physical or destructive behaviors because it is so frustrating. Now, on the other end, think of the feeling that you have when you finally do remember that word and you finally get it out. It's very freeing, isn't it? So giving your kids a sea of words from which to choose to express themselves and identify their environment will help them feel free their entire lives. So let's touch on just a couple more examples. Next time you're eating a meal with your child, ask them how the food tastes. Chances are you're going to get responses like good or bleh, gross, right? But remember, let's say it's good, hopefully. Look, a lot of things are good. Pizza and chocolate, they're both good, but they don't taste remotely the same. Ask them, how does it taste specifically? And then talk about what textures it has. So, one is sweet and smooth and delicate. The other is salty, cheesy, chewy. And if your children aren't already familiar with these tastes and these textures, start naming them. And it doesn't have to be only when you're eating. You can be in the grocery store. You pick up a pear. Pears are sweet. Sometimes they're sour. But if you are eating, ask them to savor the taste so they get to know it. When they savor the taste, it's helping them monitor why they like something. It's not just a blast of flavor. They are aware of what they enjoy and why they enjoy it. I highly doubt there's any parents out there that haven't had a kid spit something out and totally express their disgust when they're eating, right? But do you know why? Do you always know why? Do they know why? Maybe you'll find out that it's not the taste of something, that it's the texture. This is often the case. Another example, my brother, when he was very little, had sensory issues. And putting his socks and shoes on every day was a huge blowout. And we never quite knew why. We finally found out that it was the stitching at the end of the socks that was bothering him. But we went on for months not knowing why he hated putting his shoes on so much. Now, he finally ended up folding the part where the stitching of the sock is up over his foot and outside the top of his shoe. It looked pretty goofy. But the stitching bothered him so much he preferred to have things that way. It was at least better than what he was feeling. So, in his case, if he had good, flowery language, this could have helped him identify and communicate the issues that he was having. So many children have sensory issues that go unrecognized, and when this happens, it usually results in what are perceived to be bad behaviors for no reason. But there generally is a reason. So next time you're getting your child dressed, ask them how different things feel on their body. Think about texture and think about weight. The socks are soft, but is there any pokey parts? Are they thick? Are they heavy? If you're outside, what are you feeling? How does your skin feel? Is it hot? Is it humid? Is there a difference? Is there a slight breeze tickling the hair on your arms? So you can hopefully start to see here that discussing and being mindful of all your senses can help a child not only communicate about issues, but also identify the issues. So start now and start early with talking regularly with identifying and naming all the various ways that we can sense things as humans. Look, I get it. Kids often look goofy or like they're not paying attention, or you maybe think that they're too young to understand a high level of discussion about senses and advanced vocabulary. But don't be fooled by the cover of the book. The vast power of a child's brain is far beyond our comprehension. They retain things that you can't imagine and in ways that we adults just are not capable of. So discussing your senses at length with your child starts them down this road of mindfulness. I'm not saying it's a cure-all and that frustrations with your child will magically vanish, but it is most definitely constructing that bridge to a more content place. When you do this at an early age for them, it will come more second nature to them throughout their lives. So if you're looking for specifically how to discuss senses with your child, there actually are very specific ways that you can break up each sense. You could easily spend a week just discussing sight alone. So we actually put up an easy online course that demonstrates how us speech therapists have been breaking down senses for decades. There are actually very clear-cut ways of approaching all of this. So if you're looking for a good kickstart on how to start implementing all of this, visit our website at timetochat.org and look for the training sessions section. Thank you all for listening, and until the next time that it's time to chat.